If you've ever watched a marathon, you notice a recurring pattern each time. Everyone starts sort of clumped together, all running at the same pace. Then, as the race progresses, gaps in the clump begin to form and get wider and wider. Soon, the race is almost over, and it's quite clear who the winner of the race is going to be. The one who is still running steadily and has a significant lead among the rest. Given the win, it's clear that the one who is in first place has trained very well for the race. But what about the people far in the back? They had started the race at the same time as the winner, so why didn't they end the race like the winner? If I was a spectator, I might conclude that the only reasonable explanation for how this race ended was the respective levels of preparation that each runner put towards the race. That the winner had clearly prepared far better than all the people in the back, so he deserved to win. But what if I told you that the ones in the back, far behind the rest, didn't have access to a gym, personal trainers, or even a proper place to run? All things that the winner of the marathon had. What if I told you that the ones in the back had a job or two, so in their free time, the only time they had to prepare for this marathon, they were so exhausted that many other efforts fell short to the ones the winner of the race had, whose only job was to focus on training? One might ask, if the people in the back were so ill-prepared for this marathon, why did they sign up in the first place? Again, what if I told you that at the end of this marathon, there was something you really wanted, be it $1 million, a car, or perhaps true peace and stability? Now, if you were given a chance to run in this race, prepared or not, wouldn't you want to run too? Now, in the marathon of higher education, the same pattern applies. There are some students who have many resources provided to them even before they begin their application process, so that by the time their application is reviewed, their admission officers considers those students' actions as their own merit, making them be seen by others as deserving of their admission to a certain college or university. But still, there are some who do not have adequate resources for applying to higher education institutions, as there is a clear gap between their levels of preparation and the ones who have many resources to them. One of the most clear causes for these gaps in American society is the secondary education system, because in the differences that students have in their opportunities to learn. Now, I want to tell you another story. It's a story of two sisters. For privacy's sake, we'll call them Brooke and Claire. Both high-achieving students, they grew up in the same house raised by two loving, yet frankly low-income parents. Their lives began to diverge notably as the two had different paths during high school. Brooke attended a local public high school, and Claire went to a college prep school. Brooke was older, so she went through the college process first. She didn't have much guidance from her school since her guidance counselors were too busy to help her one-on-one. And to Brooke, this was typical. Her class size was 561, so with two counselors for the whole class, there was just no real time to meet with them. Studying for standardized tests was just flat out hard. She already had an after-school job, and studying was really just cramming material in the morning before she left for school. Applying for college was another ordeal in itself, relying primarily on the cross between the U.S. Best Top 100 list and the Prep Scholar website to see if her ACT score was good enough to get her into those schools on that list. And don't even get started with trying to navigate the CSS profile all by herself. Overall, the process to Brooke was just overwhelming because she was doing all her applications with essays and portfolios last minute during her winter break of senior year, and it was just so stressful. Now, let's fast forward to Claire's college process in the world of college prep school. She had her own college counselor who she got to know for all 4 years of high school. Her ACT tutor was a kind fellow who was very punctual about planning tutoring sessions. With the help of her college counselor, she was able to craft a solid yet reasonable list of safety schools and reach schools, and he would always read her essays even up to time submission. Oh, and not to mention being more than happy with helping her with the CSS profile. As you can see, the gaps have been created. But this story doesn't only apply to Brooke and Claire. This is day-to-day life in American society. Our primary and secondary school systems and resources are inequitable, which only leads to more disproportionate levels of preparation for students aiming towards higher education, and more specifically, inadequate preparation for students living in poor, underfunded neighborhoods and towns. I want to take a quick pause here and hit reverse. Let's close our eyes and reimagine our story of Brooke and Claire in the beautiful country of Finland. Yes, Finland. There, the Finnish National Board of Education determines the national core curriculum for students in primary school, which is compulsory for when students are 7 to 16 years old. That means students are given equitable levels of learning resources across the country as one progresses towards more advanced levels of education. After primary school, students have the option of choosing an upper secondary education path that prepares them for higher education, which, by the way, is free. Finland knows a thing or two about gaps and knows that when they're created by the lack of inequitable primary resources structures, it's harder for students to be directed towards and access higher education, just like how it is back in the United States in our story of Brooke and Claire. But the inequitable structures present in the United States didn't show up overnight. They've been crafted into American society through a system that affects all of us, the property tax system. Now, I know what you're thinking. You wouldn't think it's the property tax system of all things because it seems so unrelated to the problems within access in higher education. But frankly, the property tax system allows differences in educational resources. Public schools are free services for the community, so a portion of the money from local property taxes are allocated to keep those schools running. You see, what property taxes, tax money from residents of a certain area, goes towards funding services in the local school systems of those same residents. So, in the grand scheme of things, wealthier areas have schools with more funding for resources, while poorer neighborhoods with less funding are less with resources that aren't fully helping their students access higher education if they so choose that path. And the saddest part about it is that the property tax system is so embedded in American policies and law codes, and the inequity of it simply cannot be changed overnight, or even in the span of a college admissions cycle. So with all of this, I'm sure you're thinking, well, what can be done? How can we help students like Brooke, who, despite their passion to receive a higher education, are sadly neglected by their local government system? And one of the solutions ring clearly within these two words: affirmative action. Professor and author of the book Embracing Race, Michelle Moses, defines affirmative action as a way of mitigating racial discrimination and enhancing equality of educational opportunities. So basically, affirmative action is there to address some of those same educational inequalities seen between Brooke and Claire, even though they had the same family background. Critics against affirmative action tend to argue that affirmative action is a type of, quote, reverse racial discrimination. But I must remind you that the very idea of affirmative action is to create a diverse learning environment for students composed of students from different learning backgrounds. And in our day and age, that doesn't always have to include one's race. This is where class-based affirmative action comes in. Now, I'll step back for a minute and clarify some things. In the world of affirmative action, there are two key types: race-based and class-based. Usually when a person talks about affirmative action, they're referring to race-based, which refers to processes that are based on ethnicity and race factors to promote diversity. But on the other hand, class-based affirmative action is based on socioeconomic statuses. Even though they have different names, there's a lot of overlap between class-based and race-based affirmative action. Both are trying to increase diversity in some way, shape, or form. Let's take, for example, this. Under class-based affirmative action policies, in an admission simulation for a theoretical college that would be given admissions to their top, say 20% of applicants who were in the low socioeconomic category, 2 out of the 5 qualifying students would be would be from racial or ethnic minorities. So even within class-based affirmative action processes, there are still some implications of race-based affirmative action. But there's something about class-based affirmative action that's worth the extra look. With class-based affirmative action, colleges and universities can more accurately address the inequitable education system largely caused by the property tax system. If a student is from a poorly funded and low socioeconomic class, colleges and universities should take this into account because regardless of their race, their socioeconomic class is the main factor that can determine or will determine if they have the necessary means to provide and afford the necessary resources that make accessing higher education less challenging. The University of California is among other universities that have moved away from race-based affirmative action and towards more policies that are based on, quote, alternative definitions of disadvantage. And to a certain extent, this policy very well makes sense, since in American society, disadvantage is not always solely based on one's race or ethnicity, although historically in America that used to be the case in certain times. Now, I'm not trying to say that race and socioeconomic class aren't related, just that one is not the sole determiner of the other. Today, anyone can experience disadvantage, regardless of their race or ethnicity, just how two sisters can experience two wildly different types of education access to higher education, despite them coming from the same family. In the grand scheme of things, colleges and universities should first and foremost be focused on creating a diverse learning environment for their students. By looking into admission options such as race-based affirmative action, colleges and universities can approach ways to increase their diversity that aren't solely based on race and ethnicity. In considering the benefits between both race-based and class-based affirmative action, higher education institutions can explore more all-encompassing versions of diversity that help improve their students' academic and social experiences. Before I close, I'd like to leave you with one last thing, something you can do. Now, before I forget, I forgot to mention a key part of my story about Brooke and Claire, and that was during her senior year, Brooke was nominated to be a part of a college mentor program called Mentor Feeling. The program was completely free, and she met once a week over online video chat with her mentor that helped her navigate the college process one-on-one. Getting that nomination email was a huge help to Brooke, as she not only had someone who knew the process really well, but more importantly, she had someone cheering her on from the sidelines, encouraging her to keep moving forward in the process and marathon of her higher education, even though at times she felt discouraging from finishing the race. So I ask you, if you know anyone that is struggling or may feel discouraged from finishing their higher education race, no matter who they are or where they are in the process, be a cheerleader for them. If you've been through the process, offer some time to walk with them along the journey. Offer to read an essay or two, or if you know anything about the CSS profile, please send your help along the way to them. And it's okay if you're not in the position to do any of those things, but you can still encourage them to seek help from community-based or nonprofit organizations that do have the resources to assist them during their application process and experience. One of the greatest threats to our society is when we become indifferent to others' disadvantages. We need to get it into our minds that we have to do our part to help someone else. Trust me, it really goes a long way. Thank you.